There was a lady, her name was not Eve, but then she decided to switch it to Eve to trick a snake guy. And now we talk about it on Lucas and Zack podcast. I think that was my least melodically fluid song I ever sang.
I don't think it was that bad, to be honest. It's definitely better than all of our butchered Eurovision songs.
For not knowing what I was going to do until I started, I still give myself a C-.
I'll give you a C+. I think that was wonderful.
Okay, that's nice.
Welcome in, folks. It's a new month. And Zach and I are doing something that our audience will probably not care about, but we want to talk about it, and this is our podcast. So suck it up. We're talking Barbara Stanwyck, the fucking baller Barbara Stanwyck.
The best. She's the best.
Yeah. She basically has bewitched an entire nation single-handedly in one film. She's amazing and fantastic. What do you complain about?
Bewitch a nation?
I don't know. I'm trying to sound interesting here.
I thought this was a reference to something I was missing. She bewitched a nation in my heart. So
that
one of my
sounds
first
much weirder.
Classic movie loves. Her and Ginger Rogers at the same time were my classic film. Spiritual romances, we'll call it that.
Interesting.
But she's top tier.
Oh, she's fantastic. Just a classic Hollywood leading lady. Super charming, super watchable on screen. Just like somebody she comes on the screen, you're like, I want to watch this person do stuff. I don't care what it is. She can walk around a house like looking out windows, and I want to watch that movie.
And kind of got underrated behind like Katharine Hepburn and Audrey Hepburn and some other actresses at the time. I think possibly because she just has like less hugely remembered classic movies. But I would say that like 5 we have chosen to talk about are all straight up bangers. And like to encourage our audience to watch it, I think some of our easiest to watch movies that we have picked, like they are just endlessly fun. So we're going to talk about Lady Eve tonight, and like I was ready to turn it on again as soon as I finish, and that's the kind of movie she makes. If you're going to watch any classic cinemas, hers are extremely accessible for people that might be less comfortable with them. These 5
they're just it's a bunch of really they're 90-minute kind of comedies. They're just there's a couple longer ones, but she's just very watchable. Back to your statement about why she's been forgotten more. I think part of it is that both Hepburns and people like that, it just worked a little bit longer, so they got a little bit closer to the modern era, and also they have a little bit more acclaim. Like Stanwyck gets nominated for Oscars, but doesn't really win them, so she's kind of always there in the mix, but she never truly gets crowned the way that some of these other people do. I think that's more than
it's kind of. I feel like it's kind of the anti-comedy thing too. Like Hepburn and Betty Davis, were dramatic actresses, and once they get the critical acclaim, they get their Oscars because they make dramas. They got further ahead, but I mean, Stanwyck did a fair amount of dramas as well, but her most known work being the comedies just isn't going to get the same following. Even though we're about to talk about one of the best performances of all time, and it should have won every Oscar for every year in the 40s, the same performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think also just she struggles because a lot of her most memorable movies are from before 1945. Like that's asking an entire audience of film goers to go back a really, really long time to engage with someone like Barbara Stanwyck.
And arguably 3 of her most famous ones, which we're all going to cover, all came out in the same year, which might, cause some issues as far as right now. It's like someone came in hot. 1941, one of the best, years any performers had in my eyes. She had 3 of the top 6 movies of her career. They're all beloved classics, but once you're now spread out to different time periods, you're going to be forgotten quicker.
And interesting enough, this film not nominated. It was one of her other ones. And I think this is maybe one of the few examples in history. This doesn't happen very often with an actress, where you do see where it's like they almost cancel themselves out because they just have too many performances. And somebody else.
That's what we're going to talk about. But having Lady Eve, Ball of Fire, Meet John Doe, all in the same year. That's a Hawks, a Capra, Amanda Sturgis. Like Ball of Fire easily could have been nominated as well, but she's being out herself.
Well, Ball of Fire is the one that does get nominated.
But she was nominated. She was nominated for Ball of Fire. That's why
She's
she canceled
nominated for
out
Ball
Lady
of Fire.
Eve. So she got not. That's a great performance, but I think that's the wrong one. Like she could have won for Lady Eve.
Well, you know what? If you follow along with this audience, you will get to the end of this marathon, the end of this month, decide which 1941 film Barbara Stanwyck should have been nominated for Best Actress. Before we dig,
I know most of
into
the community, they're going to go and beat John Doe.
Yeah, we'll taser them later. Let's go to last Letterboxd movies before we get completely dug into the Barbara Stanwyck. Zach, what's the last movie you watched on Letterboxd?
Another classic. This is going to be classic month. I'm only going to talk about movies before 1960. I'm calling my shot now.
Do it.
Yeah, we're continuing to watch a lot of my favorites. So I watched Treasure Sierra Madre. It's the first time I think since 2011. And I'm glad I was considering one of my favorites because that movie fucking rules. It's a weird movie. The structure of it is like the pace of it is really odd. It will slow down at points. In the middle, it will become, like a Western for a while. There's like a straight up fight behind rocks. I've said, talking about Westerns on this before. I think the defining feature of a Western is as long as you fight while hiding behind rocks, you should be considered a Western. That you have that, but it's also, like a procedural on how to pan for gold in a way. It's, struggling and, like a poor society as far as like, Humphrey Bogart kind of trying to make ends meet and find jobs and hustle. And then it's just for the last half hour, it's a psychological thriller of people losing their minds and devolving into paranoia. It's kind of unlike any other movie in how it kind of mixes the different tones and the different thrills, and it's exciting all the way through. I think it's easily John Huston's best film, my favorite at least. It's almost like encapsulation of what John Huston imagined himself as, his like adventurer, through Mexico or South America. It's kind of what he wanted his life to lead, and directing was a way for him to kind of live that vicariously, and he lived it physically as well. But he's definitely in that kind of masculine idea of what adventure was, and this comes out into this movie. And he was able to cast his father, and it gives a great performance, Oscar-winning performance, as like the veteran gold miner. It's just an exciting, watch. I think holds up today as far as being engaging and thrilling. It works.
Yeah, I mean it's. Oh, I'm a fan.
Where is it ranked in your top 5 treasures?
Top 5 treasures. Ooh.
I don't want movies with treasures, but real life treasures are hidden. Is a Sierra Madre treasure a top 5?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, number 1 is of course Abbott and Costello and coming around the mountain, accidentally crashing through the ceiling of the military's gold storage facility, and taking all that. Yeah, this movie is great. Yeah, I mean, everything you said is true, especially just like the last end of this movie is this kind of commentary on what happens when people with nothing get something, and how that kind of, when you put people in tough situations, like having to deal with newfound wealth, which doesn't sound like a tough situation, but clearly is if you just think about what happens when that happens. Kind of watching how some people are like, no, we should share it equally, and some people are trying to figure out any way possible to screw other people over and kind of take everything for themselves. This movie is so dirty. I just remember this from watching this the last time. It's like, it is so dirty. They are so grimy. Humphrey Bogart looks like they started every day of shooting by like dusting him with dirt. And then like sprayed and like made him then run around and like sweat on, get a sweat on. He's just grimy and disgusting. And it's kind of interesting because it's it's right in the middle of his career where, I mean, African Queen does something similar, but a lot of his stuff is like he's wearing a suit and he looks like well done, like he looks composed and in control himself. In this movie, he's like legit crazy and like dirty and disgusting.
And an anti-hero. They're not trying to make him look good at all. This is like one of the original anti-hero classics for making us not realize till late that we've been following along the like true villain of the film.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. Walter Houston is really good in this film. It's just a really good movie overall. It's especially interesting, like you talk about this and we're talking about the Lady Eve. It's always interesting to go back and like people throw classics together as a genre. And that's just such a ridiculous take because of how many different kinds of movies are encapsulated in even like the top tier classics we hold up above the rest. Like you've got slapstick comedies and war movies and like these dirty, grimy westerns. Like there's just so much different variety. So yeah, I would say that the biggest takeaway from me watching this is just watch classic movies. They're awesome. They're classics for a reason. And don't be one of those people who goes into them and is like, why isn't this like modern movies? Stop being a prick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Lucas, I got a question for
yes,
you.
Sir. Yes,
What'd
sir.
you watch? Or what'd you log on Letterboxd?
So the last thing I did was Shower, which is this it's 1999 in China and then 2000 in the States. It's this Chinese movie about a man who goes back to his father and his brother's bathhouse in sort of like the more rural China. He works in the city now, and sort of this family drama about how he wants to be something. He wants to be like a businessman and something different than his dad, who runs like a traditional Chinese bathhouse where people hang out and get massages and soak and everything. And his father runs this bathhouse with the man's brother, who has developmental disabilities. And it's kind of just this really wonderful family tale of like you just have completely different worldviews, and then kind of starting to understand why people have the different worldviews, having like kind of getting to a point of understanding where it's like you don't have to want the same life or job as your dad, but also you can respect him for his own choices because he clearly cares about this thing. And then also just in some ways it also touches on like how people with developmental disabilities, if given the opportunity, if given a place in communities, can like have such fulfilling lives, full of value. Like if you let them be a part of our society, like they are different, but we don't have to put them in a box away from the rest of us. They can be a part of society. They can they can be a part of this bathhouse. They can work there. They can find fulfillment from that. They can be a part of the community. And just kind of like the importance of not only for everyone, just community and understanding of and respect for the traditions and old ways and stuff, but also just like the idea that we don't have to separate everyone just because we're different. There's a lot of value in just kind of having a community filled with people with a bunch of different abilities, because a more diverse like community in terms of not only just the color of our skin but also like our abilities is I just a more vibrant and full community that like we're all benefit by being a part of.
Yeah, this is a movie that I purely identify with you because I've never heard of it outside of you. I know you've mentioned it at some point before. So, and I look at Letterboxd, you're the only person who has watched it. So a real niche there, but you got to keep spreading the word. Maybe it can get a bigger following.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would really enjoy this movie. I'm gonna be honest. You would. I don't think you enjoy everything that I really like, but I do think this is a movie that I think you would really dig.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's jump into the Lady Eve. Not jump onto the Lady Eve. We're jumping into the Lady Eve. Zach, would you give us a plot summary? The world famous Zach Ford Emmy-winning plot summary, potentially Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah. So Jean Harrington is a beautiful con artist. Along with her equally larcenist father, Colonel Harrington, as Spider Joan. She's out to fleece rich.
I've definitely heard this before.
No, I'm coming up with this on the spot. I just really know this movie.
Is this going to be like 7 or 8 paragraphs?
Maybe I don't know. So she so lady, not lady. Now I can't even name the names. I just literally said it.
Gene Harrington is the con artist.
Oh my gosh, Gene Harrington, Barbara Stanwyck. They're on a boat. They are they just call them like professional card players, which just means they are gamblers and con artists.
Cheaters.
Professional card cheaters. Professional card players is a really kind word for saying they stuff cards in their pockets and do weird tricks and cheat people out of their money. And so they're on a boat. They are looking for a rich young guy that they can fleece, and they find Charles Pike, who his family has a beer or an ale business. There's a big difference between ale. I can't believe I made that mistake.
Please, Zach. How dare you?
It's the ale that won for Yale. I just read. I knew that. But Charles not in the beer, not in the women.
Provokes a great line in the film, which is go back to Harvard.
Yeah. Anyways, Charles not in the beer or women that much. He's really into snakes. And that's when she knew that she couldn't take her play because he was not paying attention to other women. And Barbara Stanwyck just, exudes confidence that she could take this guy who has no interest in the other women around. But she really quickly, and I'm amazed how quickly it is, kind of falls for him and kind of stops the con pretty quickly, trying to stop her father from taking too much money. It's like 20 minutes. It's just like him trying to take money, then her stopping him. And it's all just like a great bit and has a great payoff as well. That's like I think maybe it's why I like Spears so much is I'm just relating to the con parts of it all too. But she falls for him. They have a moment. However, Gerald has like this bodyguard that's been with him his whole life. That's a suspicious way. He thinks the guy's been cheating him because he won $20 off him, and then he won the $20 back the next day, and he's even more convinced that he was cheating him. So he investigates whether he is being conned by these people if they're gamblers and. They showed a picture. So Henry Fonda's character, Charles, finds out the truth. He breaks her. They, leave the boat to never speak again until she finds out, Jean Harrington finds out that he was going to be at this party with another con artist friend of it. There's a British con artist, great performance, great guy, best friend, my best thing. And so she goes like, I need like one more time for like revenge to go get him. So she just goes pretty much dressed as herself, but dressed fancier in a dress and with a British accent, and pretty much is able to, I feel like reasonably convinced that they have never met before, that she is a completely different person. No makeup or anything, that she is the Lady Eve. Yes. I just think it could come off as like 1940s contrived, but I think they make it very believable. We can talk about that he was convinced that she was someone different. But she's the Lady Eve at this point. And once again, quickly realizes why she kind of always loved him and almost falls out of the con for a while. But they get married. And there's the great bit of, all the lovers that she starts telling them she had, and they're doing it with Trey sounds and really well directed and edited moment of comedy that like makes him storm in anger and divorce, but she's kind of like heartbroken about it and like says, I don't want any money. I just want to see him one more time. And he refuses because he's kind of an asshole. So he refuses to go see her until she finds where he was going to be and comes back as OG Jean Harrington. And I think through whatever, he has went through, he realized that he's loved her all around. And they kind of have like a, let's not talk about it, ask any questions, make out scene with the closed door. And they start fucking and the bodyguard's in there. And it's a great moment.
Let's be real. This movie fucks hardcore.
This movie fucks hard. Is it pre-code?
I think it is.
No, pre-code's like 30. This is 41.
Okay, but like this movie still does not. Well, like
I think that's like what Preston Sturges was pretty known for, is the insinuations. His movies had a real sexuality to them. And he just knew how to like hide it through the code and hide it through, the closing of doors and through faces. Because it really isn't like literal. They're like saying it out loud. It's all just enough that you can clue into what was happening.
Yeah, no, it is. I think also part of that is just like it is not 1941 anymore, so that these scenes just the intent is really obvious in the current mindset. That I think is probably more up for interpretation if you watch this movie in 1941. Where do you want to start, Zach? Start us off.
Let's start with Stanwyck. It's the theme of the month. I will say maybe why it seems so scandalous and sexual to us is because she just like admits so much sexuality.
Red hot. Smoking, like legitimately steam is coming off anything she touches. It is impressive.
I think it's a combination of the way she carries herself, her confidence, her charisma, and also the fashion. I think I'm a fashion guru. I don't know if you know this about me, but I think the clothes that they put her in are like just like jaw dropping gorgeous. Straight at the beginning on the boat, and then her dress with Soleil Eve, and even some just the like suits they put her in. She just pulls off like every style so perfectly. But I think she can play off like a comedic seductress better than anyone. You can believe why she is the one that catches his eye over anybody else. Just the way she delivers lines, the kind of attention that she just gives to the people. It's the right level of like pegging, but playfulness. She always just seems, this will be through the movie. She seems just like very has good chemistry with anyone that's on screen with her, and just seems like very interested in everything they offer. Like she just like loves everybody for their art. That's like a silly thing to say, but I think she's just good at playing off of other people, and even like Henry Fonda, and we'll talk about some other guys, can lack a little bit of that charisma, but she can just like bring them up to her level. She can still somehow like connect into that I find really amazing.
Well, I think in some ways it's set up so much by the first scene we see her in. So the first scene we see her in, she's sitting in like the dining room, and everyone is like making eyes at Charles Pike, and she's basically just absolutely trashing everyone, mocking people, like predicting the moves they're going to do before they do them. Like it is such a swaggering, like just game performance where she's just throwing out. She's like, I am so much better than all these people. I can predict the dumb, oh, she's going to drop the handkerchief. Oh, she's going to try to pretend that she knows him from somewhere. Like she's like just calling all these things out. And it's just such a really impressive scene to like introduce her with. And at that moment, if you're invested in the movie, you're invested in this person is the top level in every category. She is absolutely just dominating. So it makes complete sense that she can trip Henry Fonda, break her heel, and then literally end up in his room within like 10 seconds. Like a guy who literally will not stop looking at his book about snakes with like 40 women trying to bat eyes at him. 3 seconds later, Barbara Stanwyck has taken Fonda back to his room. Like her just command of every scene is like the reason that she just pops in this film. Fonda is Fonda in this film in some respects. He's a very nice person. He's a very honest person. He's a very just open person. Fonda is not Cary Grant. He's never been like the super charismatic guy, but he works in this movie because it is believable to think that she could just pull him around and bewitch him in a way that like he would be basically following her like a puppy. And then to the point where when it's revealed that she is a con artist, you can understand in that moment why that is so devastating if you've been so bewitched and so swept off your feet by this person to then realize that, oh, is that all just a lie? Like that is a really understandable kind of heartbreak moment for him in the center of the film that kind of splits the two halves of the film and kind of restarts it over at a different position. You're muted.
You're led to believe that this might be the like first female he's had ever that much physical contact with. Just he has a real innocence to him and an awkwardness, within the situation. They're in that first night they have together. There's a good like 2-minute scene of them like her like lying with her head down on a couch after she just had like a scare by the great Emma, the snake. And where he just like glances over and moves her skirt down a little bit because just the uncomfort of things were getting like too real. So the fact that she like broke that barrier that like was the first one to give him any kind of like of this physical attention, I think is what made that connection, and maybe that little bit of like willingness to fall for it. Like, because when you go later in the film where, he is led to believe that it's a different person, some of it might be like subconsciously his mind was letting him be faked into it because there was still that physical connection and that kind of first time you feel that you have to her, that bond that could never be taken away. But I think Henry Fonda is just perfectly cast. I think this is one of his like dumbest performances because he is kind of in a way as an innocent is not as like academically dumb, but he is kind of socially stupid. for a number of like kind of the stunted rich boy intelligence to him that is unique for him, but it is that that innocent face, that kind of plainness. He has the likable plainness and normality to him that I think maybe is what we're supposed to be led to believe. I do believe she was attracted to him, because that could be a complaint you have too, is like, why is like she into this guy, because it was just for the money otherwise. But I think it is that she lives a life of crime in a way, the life of con, the quick fast game. And I think that like normalcy that he emits, that kind of counteraction. All best couples, work from a contradiction in a way. That's a theory, not the fact, but the contradictions create interesting on-screen couples, and that contradiction is what we can believe is what led her to fall for him. And I think what really creates a spark for us as well, because I think it is a pretty spicy, likable romance. I'd definitely fall for them and root for them, throughout. And I honestly am not a Henry Fonda fan, but I think between the both casting, and I think Barbara Stanwyck brings everybody else up a level, helps make it work.
Well, they do a couple of smart things. They make it really clear at the beginning of the film that he has been up, river looking at snakes and like living in this very male environment. So like it is not surprising that he would be a little bit maybe more gullible. And also, I think in some ways the attraction between him and Stanwyck is built in the fact that she is clearly, her moves are not necessarily super subtle, and she's not necessarily like, she does them very well, but she's clearly making moves on him. And his kind of his genuine reaction to them, like the fact that he is not attempting, he does not have a motive in their interactions, I think is in some reason one of the reasons she falls for him, because she's probably used to guys being a little bit more calculated, where it's a game between her trying to play them and them trying to play her. So the fact that she has somebody like Fonda who is genuine, honest, and kind of open, but also like a nice person, and not necessarily like, he could be gullible, but he's not a bad person. Like he's not a dick to everyone. So I think that in some ways, like his just genuine like humanity is something that is very appealing to her, as someone who is very much focused on what is the next move she's making.
And the only way he really is that, because I know that I called him an asshole during the plot summary, he's an asshole in the 21st century definition of like masculinity. Because the scene of him being so upset that she's had past lovers today, that guy's an asshole. But for that time period, for him being such an innocent and a person of normalcy, it makes sense. And she knows that, and I think likes that about him. She is purposely egging him on to get to let go, because she was still like she was still a half a foot in the con and a half a foot out.
See, here's the thing. I don't think he's an asshole even in the context of today. Like, we've changed opinions about like how many partners and stuff people can have. I do genuinely think, even in the context of today, if you were to get married to somebody on your honeymoon, your partner was like, let me tell you about every single other person I've been with. I think that would be an unpleasant conversation for basically any guy, regardless of which decade it occurred in.
She was egging it on too. She was doing that, but
she was doing some ridiculous stuff. She was doing some ridiculous stuff where it's like twins and somebody's cousin, and like she was amping it up. Like I think the intention of, like, she was so clearly trying to piss him off in a way that I think would still probably succeed today, even if our attitudes towards relationships and purity and all that stuff has significantly changed.
Yeah. Sticking on that same a little bit, because we like to jump around. We'll start at the end and move our way backwards. Is that the best scene and funniest scene in the movie? There is some great lines, and I think some of the like especially classic wise, some of the best like comedy direction and comedy editing. The editing is used so purposeful to make those work, because they're used to get little lines kind of jumping here and there, and they're made with
flashing
train sounds, flashing trains as the emergency. I think my favorite line in the film, and he's like, and who's Cecil? And she's like, it's pronounced Cecil. It's great.
It's a great scene, and it might be the funniest one in the film. It's definitely the most inventive, funny scene in the film, where like you can really see Sturgis is like he's pulling the stops out. He's playing his best hits here. The other scene I think that's arguably in contention with the funniest is just the scene where he meets the Lady Eve again at the party, and somehow manages to have every single thing dumped on him at one point or another, to the point where he has to change like 5 times. It's a pretty funny sequence. especially
There's
like
a lot of bits happening at once at that point because there's also she's the same dame that his bodyguard repeats like 4 times during that moment.
which is then called back at the final line of the film is his bodyguard going, "I told you she was the same dame," which is it's like a weird flex. He's like, that's always a good movement when you have like a minor supporting character at the final line of the film being like, "I told you so." Yeah, this movie is just really funny. It's really smart. It's really interesting. It also just does inventive stuff. There's like several jokes. There's a joke about looking for the snake later on in the film, and they can't find it, and then you look down and it's wrapped around one of the guy's legs as he just walks off.
Yeah,
it's like a really weird, interesting moment in the 40s when you're really combining like smart, witty humor with slapstick, and then also like situational relationships. So it's a weird combination of so many different styles of humor that were prevalent at the time. And in a way, is like what the most impressive thing about the film would be the fact that it is able to take all these different styles of comedy and blend them together. And it never feels like, oh, can you just stop doing the slapstick because that doesn't work? Like it's able to make each type of comedy work in the individual moments. And it's really good.
yeah. I think also something that classic comedies have done that we don't have as much anymore. It's just like so many weird, interesting supporting actors. I feel like we don't have actors like Eric Blore today. Eric Blore is the British con artist that they meet, who's just like one of my favorite character actors from that time. He was in a lot of like the Astaire Ginger Rogers movies. He was in Sullivan Travels as well, directed by Sturgis. You get the dad, who is I'm trying to look up his name, is Eugene
Charles
Hallett,
Coburn.
who like you can believe is like a believable businessman, but he's also like a kid. And just like banging on the table waiting for his food is like the funniest 5-second image in the scene for me.
Just the escalation of the
he's
guy
kind of
goes
that
out
man boy as well.
Mm-hmm. The escalation of that scene where he's on the porch and he's like, "Where's my dinner?" And he asks somebody, and then he just starts ringing the bell. And then at some point, he's just like whipping the bell. He's ringing it, and at some point, he takes like utensils on the table and bangs them together, and in a pattern, like you see a small child do, bang, 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 and just does it over and over again. And it's hysterical. It's like, this is brilliant. It's exactly what you would happen if you had a 5-year-old who wanted like, "Where's my food?" And that's what a 5-year-old. It's so smart.
I feel like these older comedic geniuses that just have very peculiar looks, and I mean, kind of look like what your uncles could look like in a way, is something that I think Hollywood moved away from. We got a little, and they're probably like all classic stage actors or like vaudeville actors. So they're bringing something different to the table because they can take their one bit and own it throughout. They no one can deliver a punchline like Eric Blore or like the bodyguard who I'm thinking of his name is that.
I believe it's Melville Cooper, Gerald.
Yeah, Melville Cooper, Gerald, who I think is also in a lot of Sturgis movies. I thought maybe I'm making it up.
He's the sheriff of Nottingham in Adventures of Robin Hood. Yeah, he is. He has an impact. I think it's also just like this era is really okay with casting people that look like your family members, but then also playing up the eccentricities and the weirdos that like every family has. Like, I think something that's so different from like in a current comedy today, those weird supporting characters are ridiculous to a level that makes them funny, but they're not believable in the real world. What makes this movie funny is the fact that these characters are ridiculous and the guy's banging on the table like a child, but you also like, yeah, he's a rich, spoiled old man. Of course he'd be banging on the table like a child. Like it not only is really hysterical and funny, but also like totally fits in the world. Like it's really just playing up on the fact that, all these families would just have kind of weirdos in them. And just really like takes advantage of that fact and be like, of course there'd be like the weird, fake English con artist, and you'd have the weird like childish father, and then like the weird bodyguard who's just constantly suspicious, even in the moments where he's winning money off the people. So it's like, it's funny about Gerald is like he is right in the end, but also like, and he is like basically right throughout the film, but in some ways he's right, but for none of the right reasons. Like he's like, I think they're con artists, but like you won money off them. How are they con artists? He's like, oh, it makes me more suspicious that they're letting me win money than they're not.
Yeah, and they're all giving their own bits and moments that like one are truly funny, but also do propel the plot in a way. Like they're all given one scene to shine. Through the card trick scenes with her dad. Melville Cooper gets his whole no Dane's moment, but also he like reveals that she's a con artist. So him being so suspicious of making that his like main joke because he's like paranoid about him being taken advantage of. Plays into the plot. Eric Blore gets his moment to make the con last longer, that he gets to go and tell Henry Fonda that, oh, this is why they look so much alike, and tells this really far-fetched story about how her dad was like a horse groomer that had an affair with the other girl's mom. So they're like secretly stepsisters. It's the most like nonsensical reason for why they look alike and gets him to believe. So the fact that he still gets to, do his con artist bit, but still that's propelling the plot, that's making us go, oh, okay, they're going to make it believable. He explained it, even though it means nothing. We can buy it now that he can move on and fall in love with her. So the fact that they just give everyone their, time, their scene to stand out, is, very important. What gets the great actors.
I love the fact that he convinced. I love when he convinces him. He's like, the reason that it can't be the same girl is no girl would look that similar. It just has to be a coincidence. They look too like they just like it's a great playing on the fact that human beings are a logical people, because they the basic logic rule is always pick the most obvious solution. Like the most obvious answer is probably the right answer. Is that like Occam's razor or something? Am I making this up? That sounds right.
I'm sure I heard that word before.
I'm just gonna make sure. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but like this is just like the classic thing in this film.
And move on. No one watches the show. It's Occam's razor. Continue.
Yes, that is Occam's razor. So, but like it plays on the fact that human beings are illogical. So, of course, the most logical solution, according to Occam's razor, would be, well, obviously she's the same person. She looks exactly the same. She walks exactly the same. She wears the same perfume. But in this film, the fact that he basically convinces himself this is a completely different person, even though everything points in the opposite direction, because there's no way it could be the same person. They're too similar to be the same person, which is, nonsense if you think of it as she's too similar to this other person. There's no way she is that other person. It's just such a great moment. It's so like complex and smart in the film that you almost as a viewer like don't realize what has happened. Like I had to go back in that scene to make sure that I had realized, oh, he convinced himself it's not the same. Like that scene is like, it's almost too smart for its own good the first time. Like you have to like take a step back and be like, oh, that's what they did before you can continue on enjoying the scene.
Yeah, and I think also, a combination of what I said about maybe like the subconscious, wanting to believe, either it's someone else or is the same girl, but not wanting to admit yourself so you don't have to deal with that she conned you. The true love kind of erasing the possibility of her conning you again. But also I think the charm that Barbara Stanwyck is able to admit, like she had everybody in that party on her side. You see her within 5 minutes of being there. She was bewitched the entire country. She bewitched an entire mansion at this party. So it's hard to like call someone a liar and a con artist when they're like, taking over the party, and then it comes off so likable. You can't. It's hard to look at someone who is smiling and gregarious and say you're a horrible person. So the fact that everyone, was going for it makes it a little more believable for him. Like, oh, she seems great though. So like, can't be, the same person. It's the magic of Stanwyck that she can pull off these cons and make it believable, and pull off the idea that we want it to be believable. I'll let her be as many people as she wants to me.
It is a brilliantly
the dirtiest thing I said on the show. If you really stretch what I said.
It is a brilliantly put together scene, because if she was less charming and less engaging and to the audience, to the people in the scene with her, then it would make it so much easier on Fonda to say something, to say, oh, she's this con artist. But the fact that she's so charming and gets everybody so interested in her, and like the dad's talking to her and everyone's talking to her, and like people just buy her stuff so quickly. That's kind of like the brilliance of her. She's so charming that she can tell everyone like any ridiculous, oh, I came over on a warship. yeah, sure, you came over on a warship right now. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, I came over on a boat. I don't think boats are running though. I came over on a war. Like, just like her ability to lie, get caught, and then divert and change, but also simultaneously make everyone listening to her 100% believe her, so that when he is faced with the question of, is this the same person and should I call her out on this? He's completely alone on an island by that point. And that's 5 minutes after she's walked into the party, which, like, it makes it so hard for him to do anything. And it's kind of what sets up this marriage to a person who is the same person he thinks it is, but who he's pretending is not the same person. I mean, it's just really smart. It's really well put together. And it's actually kind of just like a combination of Sturgis and Stanwyck that this manages to land, because, like, if you miss one of these features of this film, then it's not believable and you're taken out of the movie so quickly. But the fact that they just continually land these, like, really complicated and hard to land scenes is just, it's really impressive.
I think it's going to be really interesting to compare Ball of Fire to this movie, and specifically the line delivery, the jokes. They're both screwball comedies. Ball of Fire is a Howard Hawks movie who did, His Girl Friday, and it still has much closer to that level of delivery. Like, it's a little more snap, 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 really fast, hard to keep up with. You might want to watch your subtitles. While this is classier, it's a little more paced out. You get to sit into the lines and the interactions a little more, which is more the Preston Sturges style. To where, when you have the super smart script, you have a little more time to take it in. If it was working in this quick snap, you're going to miss too much and probably feel, a little bit lost. So I think that might be an important thing that makes this movies work. I think he has a lot of patience with this comedy. He knows how to pace it out. Because this could be a snap movie, because the lines still function in that way. They're still just as witty, just as smart, but they come off a little more naturally as people were talking.
Well, it's also a more complicated story than a typical Hawks film. Like, Hawks is dialogue over story. Sturgis is more story over dialogue. Neither is bad at either feature, but there's, like, a clear intention. I also think that, like, one of the biggest things that's going to set this apart from that, without having to watch that, is that, Fonda doesn't really work in a Howard Hawks film, but he does work in a slower, like this one, where it's a little bit more focused on the pacing. I mean, there's a reason you see Hawks work with, like, Cary Grant so much, because you kind of need the person who can do all that snappy dialogue. And, Henry Fonda, very talented, but that's not really his forte. And I think in some ways, this film is smart to realize the differences between Stanwyck and Fonda's performers, and then also kind of take advantage of them. And that's why the relationship of opposites feels believable, but also really works for the film, because it's not two characters that we perceive as similar, because the director is willing to take a step back and not force them into the same box.
Yeah. I also say what makes the romance work in a way, because she could come off as a horrible person and an anti-hero. She is a con artist. They do legitimately steal, like $32,000 from him after the first time, which is, like, not her plan. It's really her father stole it, and she was already mad at him, so she kind of allowed it to happen. But the fact that they, cut out her fully believing in this con pretty quickly. It's like within, the 5 minutes of them interacting on the screen, she kind of starts to adjust a little bit her actions and starts to make sure her father's not stealing too much money from him, or that he stops at the same time, just protecting him in a little bit, and going against what, the father's original intentions were, which makes us see some sincerity, within her, that she's not, this terrible monster of a con artist. She has true feelings, and, she expresses wanting to be out. That's just the life they live. So to find, a likability and charm in people who are stealing money from people on the boat, it's pretty remarkable. Once again, it's the Stanwyck charm, but I think also just really smartly written without taking her cons too far.
Yeah, it's really smart about when it chooses to pull her out, and I feel like this is a very common thing in classic comedies. The idea of people are pulling a con, or people are pulling a scheme, and then at some point the feelings that they were pretending to feel for the purpose of the scheme become real, and it's kind of interesting. It's always a good plot point, because it's interesting to watch how characters choose to respond to that. Do they choose to be honest? Do they get caught in a lie before they choose to be honest? How do the people that they have been faking react to it? Are they out completely? Are they mad but still like them? Like, that's always a fascinating thing to do, and I think this movie is really smart in the fact that she's seen as part of a con. She's seen in some ways as the smart person in the con, initially, but also the person who really pulls out quickly. And I think the fact that they do that and then watch her get back involved in the con because she's hurt after he dumps her is it's just a smart way to kind of tie her emotions into the con in a way that when she's happy with him, she's out, and when she's not happy with him, she's in. And so it kind of, it makes the con larger than just a simple con. It becomes based, heavily on her individual emotions in a given moment.
And watching a movie that the plot depends on a lie being, withheld for a long period of time can be super comfortable and a real turn off to me in some movies. But in a way, like it's just not like about the lie, or the lie is not big enough. By the end, they basically say the lie doesn't even matter. It's when they're like, we don't even need to know, who the true person is. The love goes beyond that. But the fact that she is out so fast, otherwise you'd be like, I can't like watch them lie to this person for so long. It's so painful. It's so hurtful. I think it's just that concept is too real to, many viewers, that watching someone betray in a way can hit us a little too awkwardly and a little too hard. And it would change the full tone of the movie if it rested on that. Because plot-wise, it is like still about her lying or hiding or conning, him. But it just doesn't. They're good at not making it seem severe and not making like tension build on that. It never feels tense.
Right. Because if she stays too long in the lie, then your audience will never accept them together. Like they will never accept them as a couple. And the fact that this film gets to a happy ending, and the happy ending does not feel false or wrong or a problem with this film, is actually because
sexy. Because it
feels great. It feels great because they're really smart about how long they keep her in a con position, like of faking him versus being real, and like that's really important. And in some ways, like the fact that I think one of probably the smartest decision in the entire film is the fact that she is out of the con before he gets the material that tells him that she's a part of the con. The fact that we see her wanting out of the con and saying she's in love with him before he gets the material that blows this whole thing open and reveals her, like exposes her, is really important because you need to see her feel remorse before he catches her, not after he catches her. Because if the remorse is after he catches her, then we're like, okay, you're full of shit. You're just pretending to be remorseful because you got caught. In this one, you really get to see she wants out, she loves him before he finds out, and is trying to figure out how to tell him. It really it lands that moment really well because you need to make sure that she is emotionally invested and out of the con before he is given the information that exposes her.
Yeah. I want to take a moment to also express how much I love the father-daughter like chemistry of relationship within this movie. It's like a real partnership, let alone like a father-daughter is like an equal trust. Like he's usually the father can be the domineering one, especially in classic movies, that what they say goes. But it still seems like he's like going along with her guidance sometimes as well, as far as her trying to get him to stop some of the cons, and there's like a real trust on how she wants to live her life and where to go. It's almost more like he treats her as a partner and a friend more than like she's an adult. I don't need to be the father that is in charge of her decisions at this point. And just a good like listening ear to her. It's just there's something very friendly about that relationship that I really buy, and I think she's a really stellar performance. He plays her father. Once again, don't have the name on top because I got rid of it. Charles Coburn. Yeah, classic actor. Just like a really emotionally in tune performance for a like comedic con artist role. And he just like is great watching at the card table. There's something really believable about him playing this game and pulling off the tricks. It's also just an engaging watch.
Well, he's also just like part of it is just that he is a con artist, but he is not necessarily a bad person or a mean person. Like when she wants out of the con, we do not get a reaction from her father of like trying to badger her or force her or bullying her and to keep going with it. And I think that's really important to the film. Like it never allows that kind of darker, nastier tone to become to the film. And so later in the film, when she is getting married and he can't be there because she's not actually his daughter in the world that they're playing, you actually kind of feel for this guy that he can't be there. Like, because yes, he's a con artist, and you know that that's wrong, and you shouldn't be doing that. But he's also not necessarily a bad person. He's very charming. He's very fun to be around.
But he's
To the point
also
where
in his ways at that point. He's like still convinced it's part of the con. He's like, I just like I don't know where she's going with this, but I believe there's something she's trying to get out of it. So this like confusion of it's just like they've been in the game so long together. He's always think that there's a play, but when there's not a play, when it comes real, he still seems there for her, and like love comes first before the con, before the game.
right, he's genuinely just a loving father who happens to be involved in a con with his daughter, but that's not like he's not forcing her into it, and that's just very important to the film continuing to function in a way that does not force you to take a detour into a darker, tone.
Once again, preventing him from being, a villain. Comedies of the day try to keep antagonists kind of at bay. There's like conflicts, but not really a villain. You still kind of want to enjoy being around everybody on screen.
Well, it's the mean spiritedness that does not exist in this era of comedies in the way it does today. In the current version of this film, this is a guy who gets beat up, or we as the audience laugh at him getting hurt in some way. Like he's a meaner character, and then we watch his retribution, and that's funnier in the current day. Like he's just kind of like he's just the dude running a con. Like the movie is very chill in their reaction towards him. Like they're not trying to moralize a lot about him. They don't try to make him out as a bad guy. They don't try to make him out as a good guy. He's just a guy kind of cheating people out of poker. Like he's not necessarily seen as a hero, but he's not a villain, and that kind of is important. Like as an audience, you never watching him want a moment where you watch him lose or get retribution. In fact, the really funny card sequence where his daughter keeps stealing his cheating hands is really funny. It's really enjoyable. But like we don't, as the audience, like you don't really want him to win, but you also don't necessarily need him to lose everything, because the movie doesn't set you up to come to a position where like you're like, yeah, screw that guy. I hope life sucks for him, or everything falls apart for him.
Yeah. Okay. Are we ready for the everybody's favorite segment?
Yeah, let's do it. Best hang.
Who's the best hang? I have a secret answer that I'm going to keep on the side. That I think's the ringer. So I want to say it is Jean and her father, but they also are going to con me and take all my money by this. But I like to think I'm smarter. But as far as like if I can keep all money out of it, they're fun at a table. And that's part of their thing. They like purposely are charming and bringing you in. But I definitely will be engaged. She'll definitely meet me at my level, and we'll have a great laugh together. I just might get divorced afterwards because I lose all my money.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the only choice, because you don't really want to hang out with, Henry Fonda's dad.
No, it's all because they're all like rich pricks. I joke that Eric Bloor might be the best thing, but he's also more in the like really fancy rich con side of it. Like he is in the upper class mingling, and so there's still that uppityness that might pull me away.
Yeah, I think it's Barbara Stanwyck and her dad is the answer to that question.
Here's the ringer. Double answers. One, Emma's fucking great. Emma's a snake. She's real cool. Two, who's cooler
I like snakes.
Well, this could ruin my next answer, because who's cooler than a regular snake on a boat? A snake with a motherfucking top hat. That snake in the animated intro and conclusion looks like a great guy. It's a great animation. He's probably can chug down a nice beer. Will be a fun guy. I mean, he's all about sin. He definitely represents the Adam and Eve snake of sin.
Oh yeah.
And it's nice to have someone who's willing to give in to their level of sin for a night. So me and Top Head Snake, we're going at it. That's my final answer. Okay.
I like how you ended. We're going at it. Yeah. Zack and the Snake getting it on. No, I support this.
We're postcode. We can't watch us getting it on. We have to close the door before me and the snake take off that top
I don't think it was just a code that would have prevented you and the snake from getting it on.
The animated snake, to be fair. That makes it nicer. Yeah, hand drawn.
I do love those classic like hand drawn opening cards. The Abbott Costello films have really great ones.
Warner Brothers. It looks really good.
Yeah, no, it's so much fun because it's just like silliness, but also really gets you in the mood of the film. Great moment.
I'd say the first time I watched it, as it was, more than 10 years ago, randomly came upon on TCM, and I think I saw the snake and I had no idea what I was watching. Like, is this an animated movie? I didn't have the experience with classic films as much, and the animation really cut me off. Because I was like, oh, this looks like Looney Tunes. I love the Looney Tunes. But it was a great thing to stumble onto when you're 21 years old.
It's a completely foreign concept to somebody who watches current movies. The idea of like animated characters before anything that's not like a Minions movie, or like a Pixar film or something. That stuff, that anything that has a character before the film now is like clearly made for children. So it's just a fun era when we had more fun with life and we had snakes with top hats before classic cinema.
Yeah.
Do you have final thoughts, Zach?
Snakes are cool. You just trashed them, and I need to redeem that. Snakes are cool.
I don't like. Okay, here's the thing. I don't hate snakes in general. I just don't want them near me. The weird slithering aspects, kind of anti slithering. Slithering, not a fan of. Move fucking normally, you weirdos.
As someone who is in the sciences, as yourself is, how do you feel about science often being used as an interest for someone who does not engage in normal society and talking to people? I recently watched The New Leaf as well, which I'm sure you'll get to at some point. But Elaine May's character in that also kind of withdrawn from society is just really into botany. I feel like that's a take on this. He's really just into snakes. That's why he can't interact with women. Do you get offended by saying that people can't interact with women because they like sciences?
No. I mean, I don't think I personally fall into that group, but I also spent a lot of time in science classes with people who were much more comfortable with a bunch of models or physics equations than they were with people of the other sex. So I think the stereotype is relatively accurate as stereotypes go.
Okay. Yeah, there's someone that definitely can smooth talk a rock, but can't smooth talk another human.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this movie is really fun. I'd never seen it before. I know you've seen it before. I was the new person going to this. I watched this the day. I watched the day of taping. It's just really fun. It's one of those films that's also really enjoyable as a whole, but also individual scenes of this film would be really fun to watch on their own, as clips on YouTube, which I feel like is not always the case with classic cinema. In some ways, they don't lend themselves to the single moments the way that more modern films does. In some ways, because modern films are based around 2 or 3 really big scenes, and then the rest is filler at times, versus classic cinema really tried to be more of a complete package. But there's just scenes in this film that they're so much fun. The first scene, I dare anyone out there who watches this film to not be completely 100% in on this film after the first Barbara Stanwyck scene. I think she's as good of a hook for any film in basically history. There's not you can make a list of the best one scenes that I am in on this film. It's a list of really great movies, and this movie is definitely up there because after her first monologue and just talking about all the different people trying to get Fonda's attention, I think you're just gonna be like, yep, I need to see the rest of the film.
Yeah. And what's going to be great about this marathon, I feel like compared to other performers, she can't control movies so much. 3 of the 5 films that we are going to talk about are just definitively Barbara Stanwyck movies. She is the one true shining, and the men are just there for her to play off of. But between This Christmas in Connecticut and Ball of Fire, those are Barbara Stanwyck will dominate the screen movies, unlike any other actor.
And impressively dominates the screen against actual people of quality. She doesn't just dominate the screen against somebody who had 4 roles and then disappeared, like you see, some actors do at this era. She legitimately dominates and controls every single second against people who have long-running careers filled with awards. I mean, Henry Fonda is a very well-regarded actor who she absolutely owns in this film. Right? Yeah. These are not nobodies. These are people who have Oscars and are all-time greats. And Barbara Stanwyck is just. She is the I don't know, the Michael Jordan of female stars. Michael Jordan is
classic.
Well,
Catherine
female.
Hepburn.
Okay, Cary Grant is, I think, the Michael Jordan. If we're going to be honest,
I'm not as in love with Cary Grant as you are.
Wait, has Cary Grant been in a movie with Barbara Stanwyck? This is a dumb question to ask now.
I would take Stanwyck over Cary Grant any day.
I mean, I don't think it's just different. I mean, in a Hawks movie, I don't think she is as good as him because I don't think she ever can be as good as him.
Watched Ball of Fire. She's like putting on a real voice in that movie. Get ready for it.
No, I mean, I'm interested, but like, I don't know. That's hard to beat. Yeah. All right. We talked about this. The Lady Eve. It's wonderful. Please watch this movie. It's really great. Zach's looking at his phone, doing a little Caleb Cohen
There's
impersonation.
a website called Cary Grant Won't Eat You.
Yeah, I just saw this
article.
I'm not going to read it.
Reasons to watch Christmas in Connecticut.
Yeah, you should watch Christmas in Connecticut. Reason number 1, it's covered on this damn podcast.
Reason number 2, Cary Grant won't eat you if you watch it.
The ghost of Cary Grant will eat you, which, potentially could be appealing to some people. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for week 1 of Barbara Stanwyck. We will be back next week for week 2 of Barbara Stanwyck when we talk about Meet John Doe, which is, from what I understand, a very different film. Looks more drama than screwball comedy. So it's going to be interesting to experience that difference and continue to experience just the absolute star that Barbara Stanwyck is on screen. Thank you, Zach, for coming here, for talking about snakes. You're a big fan. Thank you, audience. Yeah, we're going to continue talking Stanwyck. We will see you next week. Zach, hit us with the outro.
Yeah. Snakes are cool. Snakes are fun. Snakes are for everyone. Lucas and Zack podcast.